Hey, what's up, guys? It's your favorite American again, Matt Diamond. I just want to take one moment before this narration and just thank everybody for the big growth of my channel lately. My YouTube's birthday was actually just yesterday, and in the US, that thing grew slow. And I wasn't even posting myself so much. I was posting a lot of the artists around me and popular people even. But that American market is a tough market in society. So shout out to all the new subscribers. Shout out to the old school followers that have been following me for years. And if you're new here, make sure you tap that subscribe button and tap that pretty bell, so that every time I load something, you're going to get a notification. Sawa? Asante sana, guys. All right, so with that said, Karibuni, Ruaka. Ruaka is one of the quote-unquote leafy suburbs of Nairobi. And this footage that I'm sharing with you is interesting, and it's not going to be very long. This was my second time visiting Ruaka ever. And I had gone to a friend's place to visit, and I was on a very high balcony. And I went out on the balcony to check the view. Anybody that knows me knows I love a balcony, and they know that I love a view. And I was shocked. Because all I was seeing was village. But far in the distance, I saw the Ferris wheel from Two Rivers Mall. And it's very appropriate, I'll say, that the only footage that I'm going to share with you today on this video is going to be these slow motion shots of the village, with just a few photos that I took. And I only took footage and photo from one balcony. I didn't walk around, I didn't tour, I just stood up there, took a few shots. I had just got my DJI, so I was getting a feel for what I wanted to do with it. And this is literally one of the first footages I ever took. So I did a write-up. I wrote a report about Ruaka. Check the captions of the video if you want to check my sources. And here we go. Let's get into it. So I was shocked when I visited a friend in Ruaka some months ago. It was only my second visit, but my first in this section of the Ruaka area. When I first went to the balcony and saw a village below me with Two Rivers Mall Ferris wheel in the distance, I had many questions. To start, I said, "Hey friend, what's with the village down here, huh?" And she briefly explained, "This is normal in Ruaka. The locals are slowly selling off their property to the developers, but some still refuse to sell." I left it at that. I said, okay. So, a month is a long time in Nairobi. You can drive past an empty space, and when you return 30 days later, where cows and dogs were once foraging, now there's suddenly these swanky apartments. Ruaka went from a small, primarily agricultural location in the south of Kiambu County, just 20 minutes away from downtown Nairobi, with residents of very humble means and lifestyle, to suddenly something else. Multinational companies in the area have invested in basic infrastructure and modern shopping centers, giving Ruaka a major so-called facelift. It's now made it one of the fastest growing satellite towns in all of Kenya. Now it's surrounded by the UN complex, Two Rivers Mall that I already mentioned, and happens to be the largest mall in Kenya and the second largest in all of Africa. Also, Roslyn Riviera Mall, many posh estates, entertainment and lifestyle centers, busy supermarkets, and not long ago, developed roads were finally put in to connect all of it, and that wasn't there before. There were no roads linking this region, and there were no bypasses tying it all together. So according to the Standard Media Company of Kenya, just a decade ago, the spot where a thriving housing estate for mid-income earners stands was a collection of just shambas, and they call it peasant shambas, whose red soils produce millionaires who rose instantly from grass to grace, and often back to grass, by selling their ancestral lands to hungry developers. You guys, check this out. This land literally went from approximately 1,000 American dollars to 3,000 American dollars per acre. That's pretty common when you talk about shags in rural Kenya. That's kind of a going price for an acre of land in Kenya. Now, after about 20 years span, 1 acre of land is going for up to 100,000 American dollars. This is crazy. And as I've learned this history of the area and learning Kenya, my mind constantly drifts between what I'm learning now to the gentrification of urban areas in America. It's the same thing. This exact same process is happening, only here, an African version. So it even takes away the perhaps race dynamics of gentrification in America, because here, this is a predominantly melanated land. There are foreigners here. There is international population. Ruaka has international population. Even more so, the leafy suburbs surrounding Ruaka have international population. But regardless, these things are happening in a predominantly melanated country with a melanated government. So it really adds the other side of the coin when you talk about pushing out locals to bring in so-called development. It's just a very interesting topic. So back in the day, Ruaka's major economic activity was mixed farming of coffee, livestock, vegetables, and fruits. Without major roadways connecting the neighboring counties of Kiambu and Nairobi, the area was sparsely populated. To be clear, Ruaka is in Kiambu County, and I didn't know that when I was there. But those are the two neighboring counties. They're side by side. So this is another story of a convenient location in relation to Nairobi proper, Nairobi downtown. The need for more housing and investment opportunities. A mention of pleasant weather. They mentioned that a lot with Ruaka. Which does beg me to ask, does the weather vary so greatly across Nairobi? Or is the cooler temperatures of the area due to the leafiness, due to the agricultural village kind of topography, because of the lack of history of development in the area? Does that make the weather seem cooler? That's my question. On these sides of the Nairobi metro, you'll also find yourself a fair distance away from the hustle and bustle of Eastland's Nairobi. Those sides that share the same origination narrative of this Ruaka and her neighbors. The story that I'm hearing, it's the same story that I've learned about Buru Buru, about Donholm, about Umoja, and even about Kilimani. So, it begs another question. For Ruaka, Kilimani, and others, could Ruaka eventually see the same developmental fate as Umoja, Kaoli, Buru Buru, and others? From other experiences, local officials will also have to maintain the same pace of water, sewer, power, and waste infrastructure at the same pace as the developers, or in fact, even faster. And I say that because when you look at this Umoja, and even if you watch some small films about Kilimani, there are issues with the pace of development is not being matched by the pace of developing local infrastructure. And as everybody talks about with Umoja, there's a lack of water, there's a lack of sewerage. This has happened in many different subsections of Nairobi. So this now in demand land has made many humble shamba owners into overnight millionaires. However, many stories don't have a happy ending for the seller. Some say that Africans who sell their ancestral land will be cursed. We can only speculate the cause of misfortune for these new millionaires as stories unfold of the sellers succumbing to strange ailments, alcoholism, traffic accidents, and suicides after their money runs out. There's also no shortage of wives telling their stories around Ruaka about neglect as their husbands struggle with how to act with accounts full of cash. And I've always said we can get $1 million in the morning when we wake up and we might not even know what to do with it. And this is the human story. It happens in America and it's happening in Kenya. The boom is also said to have brought along many vices, leading to higher dropout rates in the schools throughout the area. Crime and court case increases, prostitution, drug abuse, and gambling. And I'm just going to say, for the record, I've known multiple people living in Ruaka, and my studies match the first-hand accounts that I get from people. Just because something looks good or it's growing or it's shiny and it's pretty doesn't mean that everything is beautiful underneath. There's always two sides of the coin, you guys. So sadly, children who would have inherited land from their family will probably have no place to call home when the last inch of ancestral soil paves the way to the newest developer. which sounds sadly familiar to me, myself, as I come from a family with no land, no investment. However, I don't think we ever even owned any land to sell in the first place. I come from a family of renters, so I definitely see common ground with the story of these kids that maybe lost their land because daddy sold the farm. And that's like an old country song, daddy selling the farm, huh? So don't fret completely. Don't completely fret about this, because some of the sellers have been wise. They've opted to invest into their Shamba sale with those monies into other businesses. They've managed to continue a sustainable lifestyle from that. However, it's stories of misfortune and squandering of new wealth that dominate the Google query of Ruaka. This area, it lacks developmental controls, unlike the suburb of Karen, which that's a place where one can't subdivide land as further or as easily, and they can't build high-rise apartments. Now, Kilimani used to say the same thing, and now you got high-rises in Kilimani. So this is the same policy of other hoods, where eventually those policies may change, just like Kilimani. So in Ruaka, with the ability to build tall, developers get their apartment buildings that they're building with many units, which yields bigger profits per acre. The more units you can erect on a given piece of land, the better for an investor, right? It makes me think of Manhattan. Manhattan is a small place that's built way up into the sky, and just many people on top. And I've never researched it, but I bet a building owner in Manhattan is bringing in millions every month, literally. So a certain investor in this Ruaka area said such rapid developments come at a heavy social cost, especially for the locals who have held on to ancestral land for years. He says such suburbs are creating instant millionaires, and at the same time having peasants who are asset rich but cash poor. He's talking about the land. It's an asset, and land is rich if you know what to do with the land. But if you don't know what to do with it, it doesn't convert into cash into the society that we're dealing with here. So, for example, you find an old lady who has lived there all her life but does not know how to add value to her land. She only practices subsistence farming and will never think of selling the land and then moving on to a cheaper place. She's put a sentimental value on the land, a value she hopes to pass on to the next generation, to the kids and to the grandkids. So, with all that said, while Ruaka's growth is a case of supply and demand, of more concern to experts, however, are the undesirable effects of property development getting ahead of urban planning. Karibuni, Nairobi, Karibuni, Ruaka. Keep taking this journey with me. I'm going to go back to Ruaka. I'll do a walk around tour. Hopefully I can tap into the village. I'll definitely tap into the contemporary community there. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Peace and love, Kenya.